Well, it's an all too familiar feeling this season with Collingwood players and supporters. Well, we begin the week licking our wounds after Sunday's 67-point loss to Port Adelaide. Welcome to this week's episode of The Agenda, and with me is Jay Clark. Jay, things got a little bit ordinary after quarter time.
It was disappointing, Chriso. Certainly that win over Geelong a couple of weeks ago seems like a long time ago. Now, we know there were some key injuries this week. I mean, the boys are missing more for Solo and Adams. And when you're missing these key injuries, the effort and intensity has to be right up here, 9 out of 10, Chriso. And that baseline work rate, hunger, zest for the contest, fell away. It was 6 out of 10, and Port was just too good. So Nathan Buckley, you're right on the boys about lifting that intensity this week.
Well, one of the areas we hoped that Collingwood could dominate was in the rucks, and certainly from a hit-out standpoint, it was a domination. But at ground level, Port Adelaide were fantastic and were able to rove to Brodie Grundy and Mason Cox and really dominated that part of the ground.
Well, they threw something really different at the Collingwood midfield. Exactly as you said, Port conceded that tap. You're seeing at the moment Port Adelaide really sharking a lot of those taps and getting good drive out of the midfield, and on the rebound especially. But not only that, Chriso, they were more damaging. I mean, with those smalls, Robbie Gray, Need, Impey, these guys, they're really able to capitalise. Here's Polak breaking away. Again, Grundy, another tap, but Gray picks it up. So this was a pattern right throughout the game. Collingwood tried to change their structure, but it really didn't work. So, I mean, you look back on that, and I think as a midfield, they'd be pretty disappointed with their performance, and some big names in there. Ebert really blanketed side bottom and just weren't able to be as damaging out of there as Port Adelaide was.
Well, Fox Footy spoke with Jackson Trengove post-match. Here he is with David King.
We've got the big fella, the ruckman, of course. You must be really enjoying it, but you're doing a lot of work for 6 hit-outs, big fella.
Yeah, a bit of work in there. Obviously, the ruckman are a bit bigger than me, but just trying to get our hands on it around the ball. And I think the mids have been terrific over the last month. They've been getting the ground balls and winning the hunt. So they're really working. It's obviously going in our favour, which has been good.
So his role was just to compete in there and at ground level for their ground level players to try and find the footy, and that means rove to Grundy and Cox, and they did it effectively.
Exactly right, and you have a look at Grundy's game, you think, well done getting your hands to the footy, but it really was a different mix from there, Chriso.
Here's Nathan Buckley, he's after-match press conference, and certainly spoke about what happened after last week's loss to the Bulldogs with the work on the week, and perhaps Port Adelaide, they were just a bit stronger with their running capacity.
It looked like we just struggled to cover the ground comparative to our last couple of weeks. We looked after the boys through the week, given our recent, the last couple of games, but we just didn't look like we were able to match Port Adelaide's transition, and that affected us in the contest.
Now, this is some of the footage. Now, this harks back to, I reckon, disappointing games earlier on in the season against St Kilda and Melbourne, Jay, because the way that Port were able to move the ball, you can see here, 3-on-2 inside the forward 50, our players out of our zone not working back hard enough to man up, and as a consequence, 3-on-2, you're going to win most times.
So many times they were able to go coast to coast or run the full length of the ground and get numbers forward of the contest. And so it's instances like this one exactly is saying, well, where is that man on Robbie Gray? Jesse White was behind the contest, and again they're going deep into the teeth of goal. I think they kicked 7 goals from within 15 metres.
Yeah.
So that really is getting it into the teeth of goal. And in a dangerous space. As you see here, Chad Wingard running into open space. This time Jake Need, who was terrific with 4 goals, getting out the back. So that run of that Port Adelaide small forwards, Chriso, was really damaging. And from a Collingwood perspective, you say, well, how's that defensive structure going again? Because that's got to try and hold up this stuff. And as you said, that's sort of what happened earlier. Do you think Taylor Adams, because we spoke last week about how important he is organising things, did that really leave a huge hole for the Collingwood side?
Well, I think it did. I mean, his organisational ability, his ability to give direction and set structures in place, understated. I think is absolutely understated, and it was missing. And I'm not sure that we had anyone back there to assume that responsibility. So it's look, it was a really disappointing part of the game, back to where we were at the start of the year.
Before we leave the defence, I think you've got to sort of give Benny Reid and Jeremy Howe a tick, though. I mean, Ben Reid, I think, is the 3rd or 4th best centre back in the game in your All-Australian conversation, top 40. Howe played on with the knee, so you can't always just pencil in these key defenders, because a couple of those tried well. It's the defensive running of the midfielders to really get back there. I think of Matthew Scharenberg, Chris, so he's an elite using ball using that back half. Well, he's had done 2 knees. I think he is a guy that can really really make a big difference, Chris, when he comes in next season.
Is he back next week, is he?
No, he's back next season, but you got to cross your fingers, touch wood, Collingwood fans. You look at that back six, he's a guy who can really make a big difference.
No question. No, that's a long way away, though. Josh Smith, Collingwood media caught up with the young defender post-match.
Just their intensity around the ball and our effort just to get to the contest for the majority of the game. They outnumbered us all day, and it's really disappointing because we've been making some good inroads the last 3 weeks, and today wasn't what we want. They've got 3 or 4 really good quality small forwards, and like you said, they got out the back a bit today, and their structure allowed them to do that. We need to defend better as a team, like as a collective, not just individuals, and we've been doing it quite well. So we'll review it on Monday, and not really sure at the moment why they got out the back so easily, but we'll know more during the week. We played Melbourne this year and they jumped us pretty early, so it's going to be really important we bring that intensity and stuff, and I guess it just starts on the track. We're just going to have to be harder on each other and really demanding, and hopefully a good week on the track, and back to basics for us next week will hopefully set us in good stead.
We'll get to Melbourne in just a moment. That's coming up on Monday. But let's talk about the 3 big forwards for the Magpies. Cox, White and Cloke, of course, back in for this game. How did you think they fared yesterday?
A lot of focus on Clokey. I think we have a look at him first. Look, he was okay. I think Buck said in the presser afterwards, he sort of, look, you see here, he's smart to square up to Pendlebury, who takes his mark. I think he presented okay, but he wouldn't be loving his performance. A couple of times he could split the packs, Chris, where he didn't. I thought he'd maybe a bit hesitant. I mean, that one there, just didn't look like he was a confident player. How did you rate it?
I thought it was better than okay. I thought he really competed hard and set up some opportunities, and let's face it wasn't a great day for tall forwards, but I thought he played really well. Now Jesse White had an opportunity there, and then this one from 7 or 8 metres, and that's when Collingwood was really applying some pressure in the second quarter, and it just, those couple of opportunities, they're the opportunities you've got to take. And I thought Mason Cox, as the game wore on, really got involved. This is a really good low-down mark. He kicked a couple of goals and certainly provided a target as that relief ruckman.
He's a dead-eye, the American. He doesn't miss. At a time when a lot of AFL players are struggling with their set-shot kicking, geez, it's a lovely technique and a bit of aggression there. He's been one of the finds of the season, Mason. I know he was sort of probably a bit quiet last week, but I reckon he's worth persisting. And now with Collingwood sort of 3 games outside the 8, with a tough game against Melbourne, I think you've got to persist with Cox, get 20 games in here and think forward to 2017, Chris.
You're thinking a lot forward to 2017.
You've got to, when you're 3 games outside, Chris, you've got to look for these positives and hang on, mate.
Well, Monday's a big match, obviously. Queen's birthday at the MCG, there'll be a big crowd, and Melbourne, who disposed of Collingwood pretty comfortably back in round 4. There was a few lessons to come out of that game because, again, some of the errors in the back half, there's a classic one there, presenting Melbourne with a goal on a platter, and Melbourne got the jump and really just lacked some intensity. The ball comes back to Jesse White here, and just, I'm not quite sure what he was trying to do, but just no real, I suppose, urgency and intensity with the way Collingwood played. So this is a massive challenge. This is the second quarter. You can see the scoreline already. So Melbourne really jumped Collingwood, and it was a real long way back. Needs to be different on Monday.
And they're going to pose a big test because they are potent with the ball. This is a new look Melbourne, Chris. They average 35 more points per game than they did last season. So when they do use the footy, they play on. They're the number 1 playing onside from a mark. So they're going to go quickly, and they're going to really test that stuff we were talking about then, that Collingwood defensive grid. Because they can move the ball really well, Melbourne. So, look, Viney's out, which is good, and Vince is on report. You'll have something to say about that, I'm sure, in the MRP. But so they're 2 key players. Vince will probably be right, we think. But, look, it's going to have to be a much tighter performance. The midfield is going pretty well, especially with Gawn in the ruck. He's imposing in there. Hogan forward. They've got some match winners now, Melbourne.
Indeed. And to clarify that, 40% of the time Melbourne play on from marks. So that'll be one, I'm sure, area that Nathan Buckley will focus on, just to try and hold them up and not allow them to play on, because that's going to really test that defensive zone.
Your Collingwood has got an 8-day break now, so this is the chance to get that bit of a rest. Now, there were some injuries and a tough last quarter against the Bulldogs. No excuses with a longer break this week to be really up this weekend. Let's
talk about the VFL, and of course a couple of regular senior players engaged here, including Nathan Brown, who was back to some of his best form in the VFL. And you'd think he's a massive chance to come in for this Melbourne clash coming up on Monday.
Is that the change you would make?
Yeah, look, I think Nathan in for Frosty might be something that the match committee will be looking at. I think he was obviously penalised for a lack of team defence against West Coast. He was dropped, then did his hamstring, but he looked to be back to his best on the weekend, so that was good news. And Marley Williams there as well. He's another one that's now getting some good game time in the VFL that must come under consideration.
Well, Collingwood missed him because Port Smalls ran right at the weekend, so he's a guy that Nathan Buckley will absolutely look to bring in if he feels like he's got the tank. Witts was very good as well. That's encouraging. And this guy, Tom Phillips, nippy, left-footed wingman, can add some bite and pace. Aish is another option there through the midfield as well. So this guy's really putting his name up. I want to see Jonathan Marsh play at some point. I know Howard's going well, hurt his knee at the weekend, might be a bit of a test. But I want to see Marsh. He's got some pace, some explosiveness, some aggressive run, that back half. In this second half of the season, I want to have a good look at him. I think he's a good talent.
Yeah, and Tommy Phillips, he wears a very, very good number, so I'm sure he'll be playing senior football very, very soon. Time for our Monday moments. Kick us off.
Mine is Josh Smith. Now, we would remember this goal or non-goal from the weekend, Chris.
This was devastating.
You're a bit angry. Now, it's like Dacos from the pocket, runs on, takes on Broadbent on the right foot, curling in, bouncing. It's a goal, Chriso. One of the goals of the year. Is it? Oh, no, the man in green. Now, he might have just gone over the boundary line by a millimetre or maybe an inch there, Chriso.
Well, just had to be probably a little bit better. See, just there, he just had to hold the ball to his right a bit. That would have been goal of the year.
What a goal. Josh Smith, he's been one of the finds of the season for Pies. It's been encouraging.
He's done very well. Now, it was a bit hard to find Monday moments. That was a classic, but I picked out Brodie Grundy, who took what was a very difficult mark in slippery conditions. Here he is at the back, just doing the old turn. To be able to do the turn, still find the footy, pluck the one mid out and grab it was pretty impressive. He lost sight of the ball momentarily, so I thought that was a pretty good effort from Brodie and slotted the goal as well.
And, so for an area for Brodie Grundy, he's got to be something he's got to work on too. So we saw him do some good work in the ruck clearances, having that impact around the ground, getting full, kicking goals, doing that sort of stuff. It's what he's going to have to improve on as he develops as a player.
Now, you've talked a lot about 2017 this morning. Now,
have to look forward, Chris.
It's the equation: 4 wins, 7 losses, a game against Melbourne on Monday, then the bye. So if there's a win on Monday, it's 5-7. How does the season... Is there still a chance to make the top 8, Jay?
No, I think it's really difficult from here. I think Melbourne's going to be a tough opponent on Monday. The forward 50 is a new look combination. We've got Crocker, Cloak, Cox, missing Elliott, Fasolo, Moore. So really, this is a new look forward 50. I think the back half of this season has got to be about development, getting it right for 2017, getting some young players in, having a look at Marsh, etc., as I said. And maybe you got to weigh up sort of those guys versus McCaffrey and Goldsack. Which way do you go? Maybe towards the youth, and they've got to knuckle down on the defensive grip because it's posed headaches all year.
I've got one message for you.
What do you got?
Never give up until it's mathematically impossible.
All right,
and it's still mathematically possible. So have faith, have belief, Jay.
We want to see some urgency this weekend, don't we? Some effort, that intensity at the contest, Chris.
We do indeed. Oh, we'll see you in 2017. No, we won't. We'll see you next Tuesday, of course. Yes. After the big Monday clash against the Demons. Hope you can join us for another edition of The Agenda. Go Pies!